Hello everyone, you're watching the third episode in the series of The Future Astronaut. Sorry it's taking a little bit to come out, but this one should probably make up for it. The last two topics we talked about was Space Camp and the Johnson Space Center, where I was next to the massive Saturn V. On this topic, we're going to be talking about SpaceX and their vehicles, the Falcon 9, and also covering Starship. But let's start off with the humble Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 originally was started, the concept of landing a rocket like the Falcon 9 was originally conceived when SpaceX was just about created. Elon Musk wanted to try to find a reusable way and cheaper way of getting people to space by launching a rocket, sending the payload into space, and having the rest of it come back down. Now, the Falcon 9 wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fabled Falcon 1. And the Falcon 1 almost ended SpaceX entirely. So what happened in the story behind the Falcon 1? It was supposed to be more of a mock-up. It was a mini version of the Falcon 9. Just picture Falcon 9, but second stage. This is what it sort of looked like. Just replace the Dragon with the aerodynamic nose cone, and this is what it roughly looked like. Now, Falcon 1, this is not Falcon 1 by the way, this is just the second stage of Falcon 9. Just using this as a demonstration. Now, the Falcon 1 originally had its first two launches. First one, it took off well. It took off perfectly fine. If you find the video, you'll find it takes off greatly. But then it just all of a sudden just comes back down to Earth in a big old fireball. Now, how come? I'm pretty sure it was an engine failure. There was some sort of failure with the Falcon 1 that caused it to lose all of its thrust and smash back down to the ground. And on the second launch, there's even a video about its second launch. It was just about to make it. The payload was just about to be sent into orbit. But when the payload detached, there we go. The payload detached, there was still a little bit of residual thrust coming from the engine, which is basically just heat left over from the engine when it's done firing. And that residual thrust was just enough to just nudge the booster back into the second payload, which resulted in that failing as well, with its guided systems showing a bunch of errors, therefore ending that mission. Now, that mission could have ended SpaceX, because they were just about to go broke. But Elon Musk managed to scrap together enough money to launch another Falcon 1, and this time it delivered its payload safely into orbit, and it was even granted a few more funds for its research into reusable rockets. Now, then this is when development of the Falcon 9 continued on. It started development on the booster. The booster took a little while to even just conceive. They used a little bit. They would do a few hops, as we call them. The booster would take off, fly to a certain altitude, and come back down, and hopefully land without blowing up. And now, if you watch the video on SpaceX's website, how to not land an orbital rocket booster, they have plenty. They have plenty of clips of their failures. One of them is of the Hopper prototype. One of the guidance systems went off, and then the entire thing went tumbling through the air. And then it resulted in the entire rocket detonating itself. Then they would start to get up into orbital launches after a few successful test flights. Then the first few landings were more of like rapid unscheduled disassemblies. There were a few of the landings, sometimes it hit the ground really hard because it either ran out of propellant, a sticky fuel valve, or just failure of the grid fence. And segue to talking about the grid fence. These are one of my favorite parts about the entire Falcon 9. Some people would say they're probably just air brakes. Well, you'd be wrong, because these are more like control surfaces. As you can see here, these grid fins have like this cheese grater pattern here. This allows it to have airflow through it without disrupting the airflow, which would cause the rocket to tumble out of the sky. Now these will all work in sync, so that way if the rocket wanted to, I don't know, want to roll to the left, it'd roll that way, thanks to the Gridfin's genius designs. Now, also another one of the very creative, innovative features of the Falcon 9 is how it's fuel efficient. It uses a Methalox fuel, and some people will ask, why does it get all... Sometimes you'll see Falcon 9s with like these little pieces of ice falling off them, and that's actually just water vapor. As soon as water will hit this super cold tank, because they have to keep it cold or else this Methalox fuel is not very efficient. Now, they have to keep it so cold to keep it good, so that way it's good to ignite. And then when water touches it, it will immediately freeze when hitting the booster. So when you watch a Falcon 9 launch and you see these little chunks of ice falling off, that is water. That was water immediately freezing when coming into contact with the booster. And I'm pretty sure we all remember the 2020 launch of the booster B1058. I believe that's a booster that carried the very first astronauts to the space station from American soil. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I do not want to provide any misleading information. If I do get any of this wrong, please let me know down in the comments. And this was now back to the launch. This was the very first launch for American astronauts to the space station from American soil since the space shuttle program ended. Alright, 1 second. Alright. Now, one of the crew members, I believe carry a crew of 4 to the ISS. And the Dragon, actually, let me talk about the Dragon spacecraft real quick before we get into the launch. This spacecraft, it's always a struggle to get off. This spacecraft right here is probably one of my favorite capsule designs ever. Now, I really like the integrated thrusters within the capsule, which most capsules today don't have, except for the Soyuz spacecraft, which it's only uses its thruster only before it hits the ground to soften the landing. I'm not sure if it softens it or just makes it worse. I don't know. But these thrusters will provide an escape system, and also I believe it also provides the re-entry burn for the capsule. And now the lower stage of it, or the trunk, provides radiators for cooling from life supports, and also has solar panels to provide on the backside to keep the capsule with electricity. Now this is the docking side. This is the docking port cover. This is a docking port shield. This will retract on some missions when it doesn't need a dock. It will even be a cupola module sometimes, which is basically just a big window which you can just stare out of. And the Dragon capsule originally started out as a cargo capsule. If you look up some pictures of Cargo Dragon, it won't have these fins for the abort system. It will more like have 2 solar wings coming out of it. And this capsule will more look a little bit more like a cone instead of an egg. And the first launch of a Dragon to the ISS was in 2016. That was the very first commercial resupply to the ISS. And then when they got developed to the Crew Dragon, this is a capsule capable of carrying 4 astronauts to Earth orbit and the ISS, and capable of staying in orbit on its own for extended periods of time. Now, back to the very first mission for the Falcon 9. Alright. Now, when this mission was, I need to look up the name of it again, but it was Axiom 1. And this carried the very first American crew from American soil since 2011. On this mission, it carried 4 astronauts to the ISS and an American spacecraft. So no more of those Russian spacecraft that look like they've been sitting in a hangar for literally over 40 years. Pretty sure they don't smell good either. And if you ever watching one of these things land is magnificent. I also want to give a big shout out to a YouTuber who actually created these Falcon 9s, Everyday Astronaut. He's a big inspiration behind this whole channel. And I also want to give him a big thanks for just being him. He has been a great inspiration, a great source of information. You should go check out his channel. It provides a lot of great nerdy space stuff that will cover a lot about things like the Falcon 9 and Firefly and commercial space agencies, and we'll even if you know the game Kerbal Space Program, he even has a few videos on that. So big shout out to Everyday Astronaut, and thank you for being such a big inspiration and for creating these awesome Falcon 9 models. And now moving on to the SpaceX Starship. Now this is probably one of my favorite launch vehicles of all time because this will take humanity to Mars one day. The SpaceX Starship is capable of going to Earth orbit, to the Moon, Mars, and theoretically Saturn. Yes, there have been some images provided by SpaceX that show the Starship either in orbit or going to Saturn. And I think that's going to be really cool one day to see the Starship go to Saturn and perform crewed missions there. But I think we're still a little ways from that. Well, let's talk about the development of this amazing spacecraft. Now, the development of this was announced pretty much as soon as SpaceX began. It was originally known as the ITS, the Interplanetary Transport System. And the SpaceX Starship has evolved considerably since then. In 2015, it was renamed the BFR, the Big Falcon Rocket. And back in, I believe it was 2019, it was renamed Starship. And they finally settled on this design with two fins up here and then these larger fins down here. Now, these fins actually enable the Starship to skydive through the atmosphere. It does not do a 45-degree re-entry angle like the shuttle. Instead, it will go radial out, which is basically just pointing towards the sky relative to its motion. It will skydive into the atmosphere and fold up these fins to help it control it. The fins will extend on this side to increase drag here and make it go in that direction. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone has watched the launch of Ship 24 and Ship 25. What happened there? Well, it's a brand new rocket. It happens with all new launch vehicles. Every launch vehicle has at least one failure in its entire lifetime. And the SpaceX Starship, I've watched both launches. I highly recommend you watch them if you haven't, because the first one is probably my favorite launch to watch because I especially love watching everyone in mission control cheering like it's a massive fireworks display with Elon sitting there very unamused. It's a very interesting launch to watch. Back what I was saying about Starship. Specifications in this are amazing. It's capable of carrying at least 50 tons of cargo to orbit. It uses Methalox fuel. The booster and the spacecraft are both reusable, capable of in-orbit refueling, and can carry potentially 100 people to Mars. But right now, I'm pretty sure it's going to be just 10, if we're lucky. But for right now, SpaceX is currently working on the cargo variant, which is this variant of Starship. Right now, all the version 1s, which is basically the ones we've seen launch and the ones being tested, those are all pretty much outdated now. They're working on a version 2, which is going to be larger and have an enhanced heat shield. And they're going to be just, really cool to look at in the first place. You should go to Boca Chica in Texas. It's the home of Starbase. In other words, the gateway to Mars. It's the place where all the starships have been taking off ever since. Now, Everyday Astronaut has a great video on just about a plan for what to do and how you should prepare for going to Boca Chica. And these starships are amazing to look at, and they're They are just one of the greatest machines to ever see. Now, the Starship, I was saying again about it, the development on this began around 2020 when Starhopper was having its 20-kilometer test flights happen. Then these would move up to 50-kilometer test flights. And I'm surprised they still have Starhopper, to be honest, because I'm surprised that thing hasn't blown up yet. And they moved on to larger scale variants of Starship. If you watched some videos of the test launch, there's even one where on one of the very first successful landings, when it landed good, but it damaged one of, I believe it was the engine, and then I believe it was some spark that ignited the Starship, and it blew up. That was a very interesting test flight to watch. And now before I end the video, I just want to let everyone know that you should definitely like and subscribe this video and subscribe to our channel. And please, let me know if I got anything wrong in this video. I would like to know what I could do better and improve the video, and if there's any information that I might have provided wrong. Also, thank you again, Everyday Astronaut, for being a great inspiration and a great source of information for my videos. And I'll live long and prosper, everyone.